That was my whole drive. I got into wrestling because I hated my father.
Jake the Snake. Roberts had it all: fame, fortune, and a wrestling career that seemed unstoppable. But behind the curtain, a sinister force was coiling around him, ready to strike. This gripping documentary reveals how one of wrestling's most brilliant minds spiraled into a nightmare of addiction. What caused such a meteoric fall from grace? From the electrifying roar of sold-out arenas to the depths of despair, we trace Roberts' harrowing journey. Witness the raw power of his presence and the chilling consequences of his choices. How did the master of mind games lose control of his own? Prepare for an unflinching look at the devastating fall and inspiring resurrection of a true wrestling legend. In 1986, the World Wrestling Federation was about to change forever. A lanky figure sauntered down the aisle, a burlap sack in one hand and an aura of menace surrounding him. This was Jake the Snake Roberts, and he was about to revolutionize the art of wrestling psychology. Roberts didn't look like your typical muscle-bound wrestler. He wasn't particularly imposing physically, and he certainly wasn't the fastest in the ring, but what set Jake apart was his mind, a labyrinth of psychological warfare that would leave opponents and fans alike spellbound. From the moment he grabbed a microphone, it was clear that Jake was different. His promos weren't filled with the usual bombastic shouting. Instead, Roberts spoke in a low, measured tone, his words dripping with venom and hidden meanings. He didn't just cut promos, he wove intricate tapestries of manipulation and fear. In the ring, Jake's genius truly shined. He understood that wrestling wasn't just about moves. It was about telling a story. Every gesture, facial expression, and moment of eye contact was calculated for maximum impact. Jake didn't just wrestle, he conducted a symphony of psychological torment. Jake's most significant contribution to wrestling psychology was his finishing move, the DDT. In Jake's hands, it became more than a move. It was a looming threat. Jake would tease the DDT throughout his matches, creating palpable tension. When he finally hit it, it wasn't just a finishing move, it was the culmination of a psychological narrative he'd been crafting throughout the entire match. The impact of Jake's approach rippled through the wrestling world. Character work and storytelling took on new importance. Wrestlers began to focus more on psychology, on building narratives within their matches. The idea of a smart wrestler, one who could outthink their opponent, gained new prominence. Future stars like The Undertaker, Raven, and Bray Wyatt would all cite Jake as a major influence on their character work and in-ring psychology. Even those who didn't directly emulate Jake's style found themselves operating in a wrestling landscape that he had fundamentally altered. As Jake's star rose in the WWF, his reputation as a master psychologist grew. Fans were captivated by his ability to control a crowd with just a glance or a smirk. His feuds with wrestlers like Andre the Giant and Randy Savage became the stuff of legend, not because of high-flying moves or brutal brawling, but because of the psychological depth Jake brought to each encounter. By the late 1980s, Jake the Snake Roberts had reached the pinnacle of his craft. He was one of the most popular and respected wrestlers in the world, a true artist in a medium often dismissed as mere entertainment. His promos were studied like Shakespearean monologues, his matches dissected like chess games. However, as Jake's professional success soared, personal demons lurked beneath the surface. These internal struggles would soon threaten to unravel the complex persona he had so carefully crafted in the ring. Jake Roberts' rise to wrestling stardom in the late 1980s masked a deep-seated struggle that began long before he entered the ring. Born to teenage parents in Texas, Roberts endured a childhood marred by instability and abuse. His father, wrestler Aurelian Grizzly Smith, cast a long shadow over Jake's formative years. Roberts later revealed he suffered sexual abuse at the hands of his stepmother and a family friend. These experiences left him grappling with shame and self-blame, emotions that would fuel his descent into addiction. As Roberts entered professional wrestling, he carried these unresolved traumas with him. The demanding lifestyle of a 1980s wrestler, long road trips, physical toll, and a culture of excess created an environment ripe for self-medication. Alcohol initially served as a way to unwind after matches, but it quickly became a necessity for Roberts to function. The pressure to maintain his intense Jake the Snake persona only exacerbated his dependency. Roberts became adept at hiding his struggles, carefully timing his substance use to remain coherent for matches and promos. As his addiction intensified, his brilliance in the ring took on a darker parallel in his personal life. The psychological warfare he once waged against opponents now raged within his own mind. His ability to manipulate others' emotions became a weapon turned inward as he crafted elaborate justifications for his his behavior. The introduction of crack cocaine marked a turning point in Roberts' downward spiral. The intense highs provided temporary escape, but the crashes were devastating. His addiction to crack proved to be the most destructive force in his life, eventually threatening his career, family, and very existence. Roberts' struggle with addiction mirrored the complex psychology he employed in the ring. Just as he would lure opponents into a false sense of security before striking, his addiction lurked beneath the surface, waiting for moments of vulnerability. The same mind that could dissect an opponent's weaknesses now focused on finding ways to feed his growing dependency. As Roberts' addiction worsened, his once stellar career began to unravel. Missed dates, subpar performances, and backstage incidents became more frequent. The WWF attempted to intervene, but Jake's demons had grown too powerful. The master of in-ring psychology now found himself trapped in a battle where his greatest opponent was his own mind, and the stakes were far higher than any championship belt. The year was 92, and Jake the Snake Roberts' descent into addiction was accelerating at an alarming rate. His once masterful promos had become increasingly erratic, his in-ring performances inconsistent. Behind the scenes, the WWF was growing increasingly concerned about their stars' behavior. Roberts' addiction began to significantly impact his work. He missed scheduled appearances and showed up intoxicated to others. During a high-profile match, Roberts visibly struggled to perform his signature moves, stumbling around the ring. This incident forced WWF management to confront him directly about his substance abuse issue. Despite promises to get clean, Roberts' condition worsened. His promos, once revered for their psychological depth, became rambling and incoherent. During one particularly troubling segment, he forgot his lines entirely and resorted to making nonsensical threats to his opponent. These issues led to Roberts' departure from WWF in 1992. He began a series of unsuccessful runs with smaller promotions, each marked by the same problems. A shocking incident occurred during his brief WCW stint when Roberts arrived at a pay-per-view event barely able to stand, forcing officials to pull him from the card at the last minute. As Roberts' career unraveled, so did his personal life. Multiple divorces strained his relationships with his children. The man who once commanded respect in the ring was now viewed with pity and frustration by those closest to him. Roberts' physical appearance deteriorated rapidly. His once imposing physique became gaunt and frail. Dark circles under his bloodshot eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent chasing his next fix. His voice, once smooth and menacing, became raspy and weak. The lowest point came in the late 1990s when Roberts found himself living in a crack house. His days were consumed by the pursuit of drugs, his body ravaged by years of abuse. In a 2005 interview, Roberts described this period: "I had lost everything. My career, my family, my self-respect. I was living in a place where cockroaches wouldn't even go. That's how low I had sunk." Yet, even as Roberts hit rock bottom, an unexpected lifeline was about to appear. A fellow wrestler, one who had idolized Jake during his prime, was preparing to offer him a chance at redemption. This intervention would come from an unlikely source, someone who understood the pressures of the wrestling world, but had found a way to overcome his own demons. As Roberts' story seemed destined for a tragic end, this unexpected ally was about to step in and attempt what many thought impossible, saving Jake the Snake from the venomous grip of addiction. In the depths of Jake Roberts' despair, an unlikely savior emerged from the shadows of his past. Diamond Dallas Page, once a rival in the ring, now stood as a potential lifeline for the fallen wrestling legend, but could a former adversary truly become the key to Roberts' salvation? The year was 2012, and Roberts had hit rock bottom. Living in squalor, his body ravaged by years of substance abuse, he was a far cry from the psychological mastermind who had once captivated millions. It was then that DDP reached out, offering Roberts a chance at redemption through his unique yoga and lifestyle program. Initially, Roberts resisted. The grip of addiction was strong, and the prospect of change terrifying. "I didn't want to live, but I was too big a coward to kill myself," Roberts later admitted. This resistance wasn't surprising. After all, Roberts had attempted rehabilitation numerous times before, each effort ending in relapse and despair. DDP's approach was different. It rebuilt Roberts from the ground up, combining yoga, clean eating, and positive thinking. This holistic method addressed Roberts' physical dependence and the underlying trauma that had plagued him for decades. The journey was grueling. Roberts' body, battered by years of wrestling and substance abuse, rebelled against the new regimen. Simple yoga poses left him struggling and breathless. Mentally, he confronted demons of childhood abuse, failed relationships, and squandered opportunities without substances to numb the pain. DDP's unwavering support proved crucial. He moved Roberts into his home, providing constant accountability. Roberts faced daily challenges, from resisting cravings to pushing through physical pain. The program rebuilt Roberts' sense of self-worth through small, achievable goals. From touching his toes to completing a full yoga session, every accomplishment was celebrated. Slowly, Roberts changed physically and emotionally. He lost weight, gained muscle tone, and learned to be honest with himself and others. The wrestling community played a vital role in his recovery. DDP surrounded him with other wrestlers who had faced similar struggles, creating an understanding support network. This camaraderie proved invaluable during low moments and celebrations alike. The breakthrough came when Roberts reached 90 days of sobriety, his longest streak in decades. This milestone, once seemingly impossible, proved that change was attainable. It marked a turning point not just for Roberts, but for everyone involved in his recovery. As Roberts rebuilt his life, he faced the ultimate test, reconnecting with the wrestling world that had both made and broken him. Could he navigate the temptations and triggers of his old life without falling back into destructive patterns? With his newfound strength and support system, Roberts was ready to face this challenge head-on, determined to reclaim his legacy on his own terms. Jake Roberts' journey from addiction to recovery stands as a beacon of hope for those grappling with their demons. His story underscores the critical role of community support in overcoming addiction. With the unwavering support of Diamond Dallas Page and fellow wrestlers who understood his struggles, Roberts found strength to reclaim his life. "I've been to hell and back," Roberts reflected. "Now I'm here to help others find their way out." The wrestling world celebrated his resilience. In 2014, WWE inducted Jake "The Snake" Roberts into its Hall of Fame, recognizing his contributions and triumph over adversity. Today, Roberts dedicates himself to helping others battling addiction, his journey mirroring his in-ring psychology, calculated, resilient, and ultimately victorious against formidable opponents.